From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. Dwayne Benson here for KMMU Main Street Media Utah, coming to you live. We are streaming on YouTube, Rumble, X, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, John Twitchell, for Let's Talk Utah's Talk with John. In the news, federal judge James Boasberg is facing mounting criticism from President Donald Trump and his allies as he presides over multiple high-profile lawsuits targeting the Trump administrations. Cases that have now brought the judge's personal and professional ties under fresh scrutiny. Boasberg, who was previously appointed to the secretive Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court by Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, and reportedly once roomed with Justice Brett Kavanaugh at Yale, has become a flashpoint for conservatives who accuse the judiciary of bias against the Trump administration. Tesla is in the news, and emboldened Elon Musk is ratcheting the pressure on anti-Tesla demonstrations across the country, calling for the arrest of anyone found to be funding the protests. President Donald Trump has already declared vandalism targeting Musk's cars, charging stations, and showrooms to be tantamount to terrorism, subject to federal prosecution and stiff jail sentences. More about Musk. Elon Musk shared a chart during a Get Out the Vote rally in Wisconsin over the weekend, which he claimed showed millions of non-citizens receiving Social Security numbers during former President Joe Biden's tenure. The event came just a day and a half before the polls opened in a contentious state judicial race. What do you think, John?
What do I think? I think I am so grateful to be here with you today. Folks, this is Main Street Media Utah, KMMU.org, and I'm looking forward to being with you for the next 2 hours. Right now, I have Michael Letts. I'll be introducing him in just a moment. But first, let's get my show off to a proper start. I always like to give out the show prayer and the show mantra before the beginning of every show, and typically at the top of every hour. So let's get that rolling. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. That's the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing this show. And then the show mantra: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Now, folks, bottom line, that is not that is not how I am perfectly every day. In fact, I fell many times throughout the day to live up to those standards. But the bottom line is, I'm grateful to be here with you, and I'm truly grateful for Michael Letts joining us today. So let me really quickly introduce Michael Letts. Michael Letts is my good friend. I've been interviewing him for about 4 years now. But Michael Letts is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. He has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. For those that are interested in learning more about Mr. Letts and his organization, Invest USA, go to investusa.org. That's INVEST USA.org. Michael, once again, thanks for being here, brother. Appreciate you.
Always a privilege to be with you, John. You do so much for our country. You do so much for the state of Utah, making sure that people understand what is really transpiring, because the mainstream media is getting worse by the day in terms of blocking stories and just not reporting it at all.
Well, we're grateful to have you here with you, my friend. And I'm especially today grateful to have you because I don't know if we will go the full length of this show. Michael Letts is going to be carrying us. I've got an ear infection and also something going on with the voice as well. Now, it may sound normal to you, but definitely got a sore throat. So, and we're gonna trudge away, as it were. Not trudge. Trudge is a bad term. We're gonna suck it up and do the best we can, because I'm looking forward to this show. All right, so Michael, many topics to cover, and let's
Sure.
kind of get started off with one of the first ones that was mentioned here for our intro. And to our audience, and also to Dwayne. Dwayne, you do a great job. We are executing on getting this more and more and more up to snuff. So it's going to be, produced better and better and better. The bottom line is, this is something that I tell people on a regular basis. Don't let good be the enemy of don't let good be the enemy of perfection in order when it comes to execution. Execute best you can, as opposed to not executing at all. I don't know if you've ever heard anything along those lines. And the bottom line is, that's the way I feel when it comes to doing this. We
I
are
agree,
we are
Judd.
working on being like a real show, a real organization. But I think we're pretty real right now, and we're grateful for everything that Dwayne does. So let's get started with let's start with the status of activist judges. Judge Bosenberg,
Mm.
the illegal immigrants deportation and separation of powers, the executive versus the judicial. And, Article 3 is about the Supreme Court. It's not necessarily about every other court.
Well,
The only court that's even close to being supposedly equivalent to the presidency is the Article 3 Supreme Court. So, would love your thoughts, and let's talk about, isn't he the individual that wanted to turn those planes around and is claiming that we have people that were sent improperly?
oh, he is. Yeah,
And Dwayne says Joe's Bosenberg is a criminal. I would agree with that.
there's no question. And let's kind of unpackage and unravel this deal that we're looking at. First of all, let's take a look at Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg was initially appointed to the FISA court. He served out in California for a little while, but was appointed to the FISA court by none other than John Roberts, who happens to not only have been a classmate, but also, well, most people don't realize there are more societies, country clubs, if you will, for every organization under the sun. Well, there's one for DC judges, exclusive club for DC judges. And quite frankly,
Really?
Judge Roberts, many of the Supreme Court justices, and we're not worried about affiliation. Both sides are members of this. Judge Boasberg is. How do you think he's getting all the select cases? Here's what you need to derive from this conversation. If Roberts were as conservative as we had hoped, let's put it that way, we had a conservative majority on the Supreme Court, he would be taking judges and appointing key cases that deal with constitutional law to people who actually believe in the Constitution. Boasberg is not one of them. Why would I make those comments? Well, first of all, Boasberg's daughter works for an NGO who deals exclusively with illegal immigrants and helping find ways to keep them in this country. Now, quite frankly, that's a conflict of interest. Nobody argues on the judicial side that that's not a conflict of interest. But what it is usually a judge is supposed to recognize when he has a conflict of interest or what could be perceived, doesn't even have to be real, perceived as an impropriety. And for some reason, Judge Boasberg, even though it's sitting there right out in front of him, can't seem to make that determination. And he's getting all the cases that deal with the controversial issues with the Trump administration. And yet he's proven he's the one that issued initially in 2016 the order to spy on Donald Trump from the FISA court. The FISA court warrants. So he has had proven record of not being able to tolerate Donald Trump, has no use for him, and now he's getting the cases that help determine how this administration moves forward. With that having been said, what is it that we're looking at? What kind of cases has he been assigned? Well, of course, he was first of all assigned the deportation case. Now, let's make sure we all understand what's going on, because I have people all day long now on shows calling in wanting to know what is the status. Here's what happened. You had, first of all, a huge list of people that have been in this country illegally. You remember under Section 8, you come in illegally, you're subject to deportation because you're here as a criminal. But also, what they have done in the past is if you came in here illegally but declared that you were coming because of political asylum reasons, you were assigned a judge. He heard your case. If he determined you had any merit, you were allowed to stay while it was further investigated. If he determined it was not, you were denied, that you were supposed to be deported. Now, that's how the system works. Trump made it a little tighter during his first presidency. He said, that's fine. I understand how the system works, but you don't have the right to stay in this country while you're waiting on your hearing before a judge. That's why he had the executive order, stay in Mexico. You come up to this country, you come across, you decide, you say you want to be a political asylumee. Well, then we schedule a date and just ship you back across the border, and you stay there till that court date comes, then you're allowed to come in and have your case heard. Well, what we're talking about now is initially all the El Salvadorians for Tren de Argueta were not only just illegal deportees that were here, they had already had their cases heard before political asylum judges who determined there were no merit. Okay. Now, I remember in the past under Joe Biden, when this occurred, Joe Biden never exercised the court order to have them removed from the country. When the judge said, nope, you don't meet the criteria for asylum denied, deporting back, Biden administration just ignored that. They never deported anybody back. So first of all, you had Tom Herman, ICE, and others now going out, pulling all those who were ordered back years ago, are still roaming around America, rounding them up to send them out. Now, the president decided that rather than have you have the ability to be heard for your political asylum under the Illegal Aliens Act, Illegal Enemies Act, the president has the right under the War Powers Act to order immediate deportation of anyone he thinks poses a threat to national security. Now, understand how this works. The president declared these gangs, MS-13, Tren de Argueta, and others, as terrorist organizations, which puts us at war with terrorism. There is a standing order that we are at war with any terrorist organization in the world, especially if they're a threat to the United States. So, because of that, he declared these organizations as terrorists. He invoked the Illegal uh, Enemies Act and said, we're not going to give anybody that didn't get a hearing, we're going to immediately remove anyway underneath this act because they're a threat to national security. They're a threat because, quite frankly, every one of those members of these gangs are very violent gangs. You remember they murder, they torture. It's not just a matter of murdering, they torture their victims because they want to send a message to the community. You don't want this happening to you. It's bad enough to get shot in the head and not realize what happened. It's another matter to be tortured. They tortured the 9 university students across the border about a month ago, where they basically dismembered them while they were still alive. So, quite frankly, these are people we don't want in this country. We want to make sure they're deported. So he invoked that act. Now, you immediately had the ACLU file suit. Oh, there are some of these members who didn't get their hearing. You know, you can't just, they are ordered, they are allowed to have due process. The president said, nope. The Illegal Enemies Act allows me to remove them immediately. If you read the act says that is given the commander in chief the right to remove anyone when we are at war with any particular organization or any particular enemy. Well, the judge started to get cute. Only Congress can declare war. So he made the position, I want you to send all these people back because I don't know that you could use that act, because I don't know that I agree that we are at war. The act says that we are in a state of, is the exact term, state of war. I believe state of war means can't be done without a declaration of war. If I'm right and there's a declaration, then that means Congress, the House of Representatives, would have had to declare war. And I don't think I've seen anything like that happen. So that's where the rift is going. Now, people have asked me, they said, but I still hear that people are being deported. Here's what the president did. First of all, we're not bringing them back because, quite frankly, we've already got them off our shore. They're in El Salvador. They're villains, and we're not going to do anything to put villains back in American soil. But we continue to deport them. And so now the judge has really got his panties in a wad. How are you defying me? The president says, I'm not defying you. I'm removing people under the Section 8 Illegal Immigrants Act. I'm not using the Illegal Enemies Act right now because you've got that under appeal to the Supreme Court. We're waiting on a decision from them. But it doesn't mean I can't deport people who have already been heard by a judge, their asylum denied, and they're just sitting around. We're getting them out of this country because, quite frankly, they're terrorists, they're rapists, they're murderers, they're thugs, and we're going to get rid of them. And so that's where we're at now. But this particular judge, you can see, is trying to be nitpicky. When you take a look at the Illegal Enemies Act, it very clearly says in the first section, the commander in chief has the right to make the determination when we are at a state of war to remove anyone from this country he thinks is a threat to national security. Furthermore, here's what's important in this act. It does not allow for judicial input or review. The courts are not allowed by statute to review this act. But here you've got this judge saying, oh, no, I don't care what the statute says, what the Constitution says. I'm going to issue a national injunction. One district court for the District of Columbia is putting an injunction and putting the whole country at risk because he is upset that he doesn't think the liberal people whining in his ear that these people are not getting jurisprudence or they're not getting their ability to have justice heard. So he's siding with them. They decided to try to make all of us have to tolerate additional gang members just because he's trying to stop the Trump administration. That is one example of judicial activism. It doesn't end there. We have judges all across the country doing the same thing on various issues. You had a judge that said to the Department of Defense, Pete Hasketh, you can't just say that transgenders can no longer be soldiers. We get to decide. Now, this is one judge trying to decide for the entire country. I'm going to put an injunction and hold your being able to can anybody that's transgender. Now, remember that the Secretary of Defense's role is to make sure we have a military that is war ready, prepared at its best. Studies show that transgenderism does not make a military ready organization or outfit. And so that's why he's eliminating it. But you should never have a judge deciding what is best for the military. That's the executive branch. We have another judge who, when we said, talk about the Trump administration, that there are trillions of dollars that are going through USAID and they're not being wasted. They're being laundered, embezzled. These are felonies. And so here's what we're going to do. We're turning the valve off. Nope, you don't get the money to be able to embezzle it and to be able to commit crime with it, to be able to commit felonies. What did this judge do? Oh, no, you don't get to make that decision. We're ordering you to continue to fund, even if it is embezzlement, until we decide whether you have the constitutional right to cut off their money. We've had another judge who has said on all the people who have been let go, the probationary employees, you remember the President Trump is trying to downscale the size of government and has ordered 25,000 people here, 10,000 there, who are what we call probationary employees, people who have just recently been brought on. They haven't been on long, and said, look, we did a survey. You remember the email survey? They didn't even respond. We don't even think they're actual employees. We're going to go ahead and dismiss them all. Another judge comes in and says, no, I don't think you have the right to do that.
5-question email. Yeah, it's just a 5-question email.
Exactly.
You know, basically, what did you do for this week, and who's your direct report, and
so
what did you do this week?
You can see where this conversation is headed on every major initiative that the president is implementing. You have activist judicial judges who are blocking it. Now, here's what you need to understand what the Constitution says. The Constitution only creates one court, the Supreme Court. If you look in the second section, it says it authorizes Congress to have additional district courts for matters only within those districts. So when a judge orders a plane to come around and you can't export anybody, not from my district, you can't deport anybody from America, what has he done? He's ignored that it can only be applied to the district, and he has decided to make himself the new president of the United States to dictate policy for our entire
Right.
nation. This has to be resolved and has to be ended because if it doesn't, we are going to be in a chaos of a situation. Who's running the country? Is it a few judges that are strategically placed across the country? Or is it the president of the United States? Because as I recall, John, the only person we voted for as a nation entirely was the president, was not for a judicial district judge.
I have some serious concerns about this. I have a number of serious concerns with it even this question going before the Supreme Court, and here's the reason why. We know. Let me put it this way. Of course, the judges in general are going to want to say, no, this is within our realm. This is within our power. This was within, because that gives them more power.
Correct.
It allows them to keep power. Oh, come on, John. How dare you say that? Well, frankly, let's look to Israel, where the judges supersede the PMs there. Same thing in Brazil. Just happened in Romania. Just happened and just happened in France, where they declared that the person right now that's leading the leading conservative contender has just been taken out.
Correct.
Now, she doesn't have to go to jail, but she's not allowed to run for office.
She's allowed to be on the ballot.
So,
you're exactly right.
yeah. So the bottom line is, this is a pattern. Of course, they're not going to want to give up their power. And let's see, is it Keegan? Is it Keegan that's the new lady?
Correct. Keegan Brown.
The new appointed female.
Yes.
That's Keegan Brown. When has she ever not found for the federal government and for more power? I have not been satisfied with her, been very unhappy with her.
Well, she's also
She
a
has
member
never
of
gone
this
against.
society that we talked about. Remember, I told you that John, that Bogert, all these DC judges are members of this secret society, the Secret Country Club. She's a member as well. So it's not like you can only be a Republican to be a member, only a Democrat. They're all in it together. Do you not think they cover for each other?
Absolutely, totally. Well, if you're in your society, that's one of the main roles of most societies is to to protect their friends. Okay, so I want to dive down another piece into John Roberts. So John Roberts, Trump said, well, maybe we need to look at impeaching this judge. You know what? That's totally within his role, let alone, and then it's within the role of Congress, and it's within the role of the Senate.
Correct.
I'm going to say, Judge Roberts, I have no problem with you speaking out as a private citizen, John Roberts. But should you be speaking out about this, shouldn't you recuse yourself because you're a member of this society? You shouldn't even be speaking about it. I don't remember the last time I ever heard a judge come out and say, I don't think we should be doing impeachments, and saying that we should be doing an impeachment is wrong. I've never remember a Supreme Court judge coming out and saying that.
This never happened before, John. Here's what it's basically done. It's tipped the hand of the balance of the Supreme Court. Now you know where they stand. Here's what has occurred in the past. Let's talk about how we're going to solve this issue. In the past, years ago, you have the executive branch, the president, who is supposed to lead the country based on the laws passed by the legislature and by the budget given by the legislature. So then you begin to have issues that came up, abortion, other things that I'm just using, not saying this is the only one, plenty of them came up, where politicians said, oh, I don't want to take a stand because the nation is divided. I don't want to lose the risk of having people be mad at me. So we just won't do any legislation. Send it over to the courts. Let them decide what is the legality. Should we or should we not have abortion, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the court said, well, gee, I didn't realize we had that kind of power. And they did it on more than one occasion. So the courts gladly accepted the power. Now they don't want to give it up. But quite frankly, it's not what the Constitution provides for. This is what this administration is trying to do. We need to get back to what does the Constitution say, and are we abiding by it? And that's where we're getting such a pushback, because people are used to corruption, they're used to power, they're used to greed, and the only way to break that is to expose it. Now, somebody asked me, how in the world can we possibly get this rectified? Let's talk about that for a minute. It's very controversial, but I believe it's the only way. We have a list, a lot of lists actually, of people all across our elected field, our judicial field, our bureaucratic field, administrations field, who we have information, intelligence, dossiers, investigations that they have created felonious acts. They've either been involved in money laundering, bribery, they've sold their vote, they have, the list goes on and on, the Epstein files, and we've talked about that. And so, quite frankly, right now, they're sitting there just as corrupt as anybody else, making the decisions for you and I. The only way to get this issue solved is we have to start moving forward with the indictments that Pam Bondi has been working on. It's time to release the Kraken. It's time to start having TV cameras showing high level elected officials in the House, in the Senate, in the judiciary, in the administrations, previous presidents, key members, key flagships of Wall Street being cuffed and sent out to Gitmo for military tribunals with the information. Make it public to the American people. This is exactly why each person has been indicted. You make the determination yourself whether you think there's enough evidence there to hold a trial. Now, remember, we're not just removing them because we don't like them. We have evidence that they have committed treason or bribery against this country or stolen from the U.S. Treasury. Here's the evidence. They're going to get a trial. They'll get a military tribunal trial, and they'll be able to present their evidence to counter that. And of course, a decision by a jury will be determined as to whether they're innocent or guilty. But when people start seeing that they're being held accountable, you're going to see a different attitude in the judiciary, in Congress, etc. But right now, nobody's held accountable, John. So they're going to all continue to fight to keep the old ways. Why are the old ways so good for them? What do you think they're getting for all this? When they sell a vote, when they sell their position on a court, do you think they're doing it for free? The fact of the matter is, there is so much money, trillions of dollars, that has been laundered and used for nefarious purposes and buying votes and corruption across the country. They don't want to give up their bread and butter, and that's why they're fighting so hard to keep it.
Well, I think the main reason why the Democrats are fighting so hard is they know that their funding sources
You're exactly right.
That's why they're fighting against. That's why they're fighting against Doge. Why they're fighting against Trump is because their funding sources being revealed and taken away.
And you'll notice, here's what I want to make sure our listeners are understanding. It's not just Democrats. There are plenty of establishment Republicans that are doing the same. I mentioned this before on your show. I'll mention it again. Ukraine has provided a list of people that they say the money, this is just the money, not the money that was gotten from ordinances that were sold on the black market. This is just the cash that was given to Ukraine. And they say, here is a portion that we got to keep, which is less than 10%. Here's the portion that we sent back to NGOs all across America who have congressmen and senators sitting on their boards. You remember I told you the ironic part is typically when you serve on a charitable board, you do it for free. They get paid millions of dollars for sitting on these boards. And this is how they continue to fund and money launder and sell their vote. And it's bribery, it's laundering, and it's stealing from the U.S. Treasury, and it's a felony.
Who would some of those individuals be?
Right down the last list I saw had 33, 34 at the top of the list. Everything from Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Lindsey Graham. We could just continue to go down the list. I mean, it's in the House. You'd be shocked at all the names that are on there. That's just the Ukrainian issue. That's not all the money that comes from USAID to all the other NGOs for other foreign aid projects. People say it's an elaborate system. I'm telling you, this is the most sophisticated criminal syndicated network you've ever
Well,
seen.
Zelensky said he only has received about 50% of the money.
It was 50, it's down to 30 now.
Him. So if it's whatever it is, so now 70% of the money never got to him. Where did it go?
Oh,
How did it never
according
get
to what our records are showing, our tracking, it's going back to NGOs in the United States. And those NGOs are then using it for their stated cause. So here's what's funny. When you talk about the NGOs, they come up with a name. They create a new charity, a new organization. They'll call it Democracy for Ukraine or the Republican Method for Foreign Relations. And then nobody ever bothers to check, well, what does that mean? What do you do? What they do is they pay their board members. They have a staff. They have an office. They have expense accounts for each one of the board members, travel accounts, expense accounts, etc. So basically, it's nothing but a wash through and a money laundering operation to be able to enrich themselves and their friends. It's not just members of
Sounds like I need
Congress.
to be getting on
Yeah,
board.
so I said it's not just members of Congress or something like that that serve on the boards. They're buddies. I mean, they got plenty of people on the boards. That's how they work this
Their
operation.
children.
Exactly.
Yeah, their family, their children,
And close
yeah,
friends and people that work very diligently to keep them elected.
Yes. So I want to kind of put a little bit of a bow around the judge situation. What needs to be done? What can
Well, let's
be
talk about
done?
what can be done. I mean, what the Constitution says, and then we'll talk about what needs to be done. What can be done, the Constitution says, gives the right of impeachment to Congress. So you can impeach these judges. Or you remember, Congress can dictate to them everything but the Supreme Court can dictate because Congress created the district courts. Congress can come back in, which a bill just was introduced into the House, passed the House, this morning, to say, hey, district courts can't make a national decision. In the discussion. So Boasberg, you can't issue an injunction that affects the entire country. Anybody can't do that anymore. That's going to no longer be allowed. And so the Congress can rein them in. The Supreme Court should be reining them in because that's their job, but they're not going to. Or we could go ahead and impeach them if we can't seem to get anything else done. But that's what our options are to do. Now I said, what should we do? Well, let me ask you, the listeners a couple questions, John. Do you think the members of Congress are going to vote to impeach somebody when they're doing the same thing? So,
Probably.
how are we going to get these impeachments through? We're not. So, the only way we're going to be able to do it is to make sure there's transparency and begin to call people out for the crimes that they've done, put them in handcuffs in front of TV, move them to Gitmo for military tribunals to be able to assess their innocence or their guilt. When that happens and they see that there's accountability, two things are going to happen. First of all, probably a majority of them are going to be found guilty and removed. You remember, you can't serve in Congress if you're under indictment. You can't serve on the bench if you're under indictment. So all these vacancies will suddenly come up. Now, how do the vacancies get filled? They get filled through Congress. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to go back to the American people. Here's what's so ironic about this situation, John. You ever notice in election time, everybody says, "Oh yeah, we got to clean the house. Let's get rid of Congress," except for mine. They always vote to send mine back because mine's a good guy, but everybody else is bad.
Right.
And so what ends up happening? Nobody gets sent out. They all go back. But this way, we don't give the American public that ability. They go ahead and get removed because they have committed a crime and they can no longer serve. Now we have the opportunity for open seats. Probably a 2/3 majority of the seats would be open. And now we ask the American people, do your due diligence. Send us people of integrity, values, and principles up here. And once they come back to the Hill, then we say, now here's all the indictments that are pending for the judicial. You care to do your job and move forward as to whether they should be impeached or not? That's how you get things done. You then impeach those who have been indicted judicially, and you replace them with new judges who have integrity and morals and values.
Do you think that? What do you think the chances are that we're going to have this happen?
I don't think we have any choice, Sean. And here's why I make that statement.
Okay, you don't think we have any choice, but what do you think the chances are that it's actually
I
going to
think it's very
happen?
high. I think Pam Bondi and Trump know this, that right now we're going to be stymied for the next 4 years if we don't deal something with the integrity of our Congress and the integrity of our judicial system. It's not a matter of, I don't like the way you voted, John. You voted against me and I don't like you. That has nothing to do with it. Did you commit crimes? Have you taken bribes? Have you funneled money back to you and your family? Have you used your judicial position to get paid by certain organizations to block other legislative matters, to weaponize your bench? If you have, if you and I did that, John, how soon will we be in jail? And if we can't make it uniform so that everybody faces the same penalties, then we have a two-tier justice system. And America will not survive with a two-tier justice system. We've had it for the last few decades. It's brought this country to its knees. And quite frankly, we either better fix it or we're going to end up collapsing.
Well, folks, just real quickly, my very, very good call screener and producer wanted me to mention you are listening to KMMU Main Street Media Utah. We're live on YouTube, X, Rumble, and our own website, kmmu.org. And also, you can call in and ask Michael your questions at the following number, 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Feel free to call in. Our lonely call screener is waiting for your calls, so we'd be happy to take any calls. And frankly, when I used to have when I was on K Talk, we'd have callers call in all the time to talk to Michael Letts, and we'd have some great questions. So I'm sure you've got some questions that we'd love to have you reach out to. And I see that we have some people out there listening or right now viewing us on Main Street Media. So we would love to have your questions come to Michael Letts. Also, so moving forward just a little bit, I want to get into Tesla a little bit. Tesla. So we're seeing, let's see, I want to say it was September, or not September. It was Saturday that we saw a bunch of riots pop up all over, basically almost in every
Correct.
state. There were, let me rephrase that, protests. Some of them basically turned into small riots. And not only that, something that is just, it's been interesting seeing a number of these people that are driving Teslas. As of 5-6 years ago, driving Tesla was the really Democrat thing to do. A number of them were like, I'm a Democrat. I bought this to support the environment.
Correct.
And now people are keying my car, burning my vehicle. You know, many of the people that bought it are doing it to support. And some of them are now saying, now I'm questioning whether I should be a Democrat or not. Obviously. So,
Well, the Democrats are not so much
and
interested in their causes as they're interested are in their party and what they think is best for them at the time.
they're interested in their
Correct.
money. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, you raised a very valid point there. I have people tell me that all the time. But you know, here's what we need to take a look at. As you validly pointed out, what is driving this? It's the fact that you're fixing to go into a period here coming up into the summer to where we expect to see a lot of what we just talked about. Indictments coming down, lists being revealed, and quite frankly, people being held accountable. Now, that's the last thing these people want, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, makes no difference. They don't want you to know what they've been up to. And so they've got to find a way to divert the narrative, divert the attention, slow the agenda down. How are they doing it? They're using activist judges to put blocks in. Somebody asked me, how come some of the lists haven't been released yet? Don't you know the judges behind the scenes, the activist judges, are threatening action? You can't go ahead and release these, even though the president has given the executive order to do so. That's being haggled behind the
In
scenes.
what way are they threatening action?
They're
In
threatening
what way
that,
are they
that
threatening action?
you better make sure that everybody on that list is supposed to be on that list, that every fact is accurate, or you will be open to all kind of personal subjects in litigation for damaging the reputation, which I get. But quite frankly, they have reviewed these files time and time again. Nothing has changed. Every I has been dotted, every T has been crossed. Enough's enough. Let the Kraken loose. Me, regardless of the threats that are coming because of it.
So I notice when the left riots, everybody goes, it's peaceful protests and supports them, especially the Democrat mainstream media.
Correct.
But the Republicans have a peaceful protest and have agitators shoot things into have things, have the police shoot in tear gas into peaceful people back on January 6th, and they call it an insurrection.
You're exactly right.
It seems like the left is trying to start a civil war.
They are.
And okay, so and on top of that, they're being terrorists.
They are.
Oh, John, come on, John, you're going way too far saying they're being terrorists. There's multiple videos up in Idaho last week. There was a at Tesla dealership. There was a pro Tesla and pro Doge support rally that was there. A 70-year-old man drove his car into one of the protesters. As soon as he got out of his truck, the guy said he saw me, got into my get out of my truck with an American flag and drove into me. Down in Arizona, a guy cut off in a green car, cut off a woman, got out of his car, and this is where she made a huge mistake. She rolled down the window.
Correct.
That was a
big mistake.
Bad mistake. Don't roll. Someone cut you up, folks. Don't roll down your window. Do not roll down your window. Hopefully, you've got something that can protect yourself inside that vehicle.
Exactly.
But she rolled down the window and started to say, "You cut me off," and he started punching her. And there's video from the Tesla itself showing that is happening. Eventually, the passenger of and I want to say it was a green Cavalier, gets out of the car, pulls the guy that's punching her,
and they drove off
and pulls him back from her car. So the bottom line is, if this was being done, let's flip the script. Let's say that this was a bunch of Trump-supporting individuals with MAGA hats on. This would be all over the news that this would be the most terrible thing on the face of the earth. But nobody seems to care on the left. We're not having any questions coming from the Democrat mainstream media to Democrats in legislatures and Democrat elected officials saying, will you denounce all this violence that's happening to Doge, to Tesla, and so forth? What are your thoughts?
Well, you're exactly right. Let's work our way backwards. There's a number of things for us to dissect here. First of all, there has been no condemnation from any Democrat to what's going on. Second of all, on the story that you gave, that was a 61-year-old woman. That was an old lady that this guy beat up with closed fists. Now, let me let him know, just in case he's listening. We have your information. We know exactly what your name is. We know where you live in Texas. You went up there for the rally. You decided to hightail it out. You came back, try to hide in Texas. You have the best U.S. Marshals fugitive team on this case. You're going down. We're going to make sure of that, and you will spend. Here's what has happened. The president has.
Please resist arrest. Please resist arrest.
And even in this situation, the president has changed the playing field. By executive order and by concurrence with the Attorney General, we are now charging these peoples with domestic terrorism. That is a felony, which means a minimum 20-year sentence. Now, will you get a judge to uphold 20 years? Maybe, maybe not. But will you go to jail? There's no question about that. There's not going to be any slap on the hand. It's a misdemeanor. It's a $10 fine and go home. You will be serving time. Now, here's what I want to make sure the listeners understand. Those who are listening, who are contemplating this kind of behavior, you're being paid to do it. quite frankly, we've also issued a directive that we're going after the funding sources. George Soros, make sure you listen to that one twice just to be on the safe side. Everybody that's funding this, we're going to charge with domestic terrorism, 20-year minimum sentences. The second thing that you need to be aware of, folks, you're not hurting anybody but yourself. Do you think you're hurting Elon? Elon doesn't own those Tesla dealerships. Investment groups do. They have plenty of insurance to cover it. You're not hurting them in the least. Who are you hurting then? Yourself and your family. And that's it. How do you think your family's going to feel when you go to jail for at least a couple years? Lose your job, lose your family, your kids disrespect you anymore. For what? To key a Tesla because you didn't like Elon Musk? What a horrible way to try to quote unquote get back at him. But it didn't do a thing to him. You didn't bother him in the least. So quite frankly, we have upped the ante. A new sheriff is in town. It's domestic terrorism. I think long and hard, regardless of how much money they're offering you to come be a part of these protests and riots. I think long and hard as to whether it's worth anything, because it's not. You're going to destroy your life if you participate. We've already got handfuls that we have identified, and indictments are being served as we speak. So quite frankly, you're going to see some people that are suddenly going to get jerked out of their location, be put behind bars, their lives destroyed because of stupidity on their part. Make sure you're not a part of that.
Okay. So there's a part of me that really hates domestic terrorism. I hate it. I hate it being used. I think it should be left to states and local municipalities. But the bottom line is George Soros is funding a lot of
Correct.
these state attorney generals, these state municipalities, the state district, the district judges supporting the state or the local county DA. So there's a part of me that's starting to go, it's been used against us, but my concern is this warps up into, okay, so as soon as we get in another Democrat, they're going to start going after Republicans over nothing.
Well,
I mean, because they've been doing it already.
here's the difference, and I understand what you're saying, John. But let's look at history. Let's look at the first summer of love with George Floyd. Where did they start those initial major riots and burning? Places like Minnesota, Governor Walsh. You think anything happened to any of them? No.
No,
And you may had a couple misdemeanor $20 fines, and that was it. And so what happened? There was quickly a mindset that this is fun, no consequences. Let's get out and have a blast. And it carried all through the summer, terrorizing American citizens. We are determined that's not going to happen again. The second thing is by implementing this provision, we're not just saying that we're going to come after you if you're protesting, because there is freedom of speech. You have to be convicted of vandalism. You say, well, how are we going to prove that? Folks, do you not realize that Tesla, not just the dealerships, but every car is equipped with all around cameras? We will know exactly what damage you did or didn't do. You walk by, just touch it with your thumb. There's no damage there. There's nothing we can do about that. You went by with a key, or you threw a Molotov cocktail on it, whatever. You're on camera. You say, I was wearing a mask. For the first time now, we have our agencies cooperating, working together, national security, intelligence agencies, and others. Trust me, we've got technology and software you've never heard of, and we can find out who you are within a heartbeat. Just like I just said, we've already identified the one who assaulted this 61-year-old lady. He's going down. And quite frankly, so will the rest of you. Only if you vandalize, only if you destroy property. So you want to continue to protest? Feel free. Just make sure you don't destroy anything, and you will never be guilty of terrorism. But if you decide to vandalize, destroy property, put people's lives at risk, you will go down as a domestic terrorist.
well, something that I don't even like the left doing is they're leaving notes behind on people's cars, saying, calling them Nazis and so forth. To me, that raises concerns, serious concerns that you would do
I
that.
would agree that that is a stupid thing to do. But however, in the context we're talking about, it is freedom of speech, and you won't be being targeted for domestic terrorism for that. But you vandalize, you destroy property, you injure people, you've crossed the line.
Well, um, if it was done by someone on the right, like I said, they would be it would be all over the news.
Well, I agree with what you're
But
saying,
because
John.
it's being done by the
Yeah.
left, they're being protected.
I agree with what you're saying in this sense. It was somebody on the right putting a note calling somebody on the left a Nazi. They'd say it was hate speech, and they'd find some way of making it a crime, and you'd be arrested for it. We're still abiding by constitutional principles. We're still giving you the right, freedom of speech. But when you vandalize, when you destroy property, when you engage others and you harm others, that's a different story, and that is terrorism.
So something that I want to just a headline that I want to mention, and we kind of along the lines of Elon Musk. Something that I want to mention, headline on Gateway Pundit: Elon Musk accuses U.S. government of deleting terabytes of financial data to cover up, actually deleting terabyte of financial data to cover up crimes, claims we recovered it due to their tech incompetence.
He is correct.
I hope you see a bunch of people get perp walked over
Well,
that.
let's get back to what we talked about when we first started this conversation. The left is engaged in the epic battle to destroy us. They will stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing to try to destroy any evidence against them, try to create anything they can against those with principle and values. And quite frankly, they're losing the fight. They know it. They are desperate to make sure that they keep any lists from coming out, that they keep any more inquiries from going in. You know, most people don't realize, but let me just tell you what a great job Cash has done as the FBI director. He has launched more investigations. You know, James Comey's under investigation, Hillary Clinton's under investigation. I mean, we got plenty of stuff that we already know what the answer is. We've already got all the evidence, but it's being done properly now, investigated properly, and charges will be coming because of that. And nobody's going to get them off. And I know I hear it quite often. I've had people tell me, even today, we've been on, I guess, show number 8 for the 9 for the day. And I've had people say, we hear that all the time, but nothing's going to happen to them. Folks, I understand your frustration. I share it. But I will tell you this time it's different because the president understands if we don't pursue what we know to be nefarious actions, crimes, then we have a two-tier justice system that will be enforced forever. Our Constitution will collapse, our country will collapse, and we will exist no longer.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announces federal charges against Colorado Tesla firebomb.
Correct.
Thank heavens.
That's one of many. There's about
also,
10 of them she's fixing to announce.
Well, in Austin, there was a guy that left a unexploded device at one
Correct.
at an Austin dealership. Folks,
this is domestic terrorism.
I just look at the left. I just look at the left and I go, you guys are idiots. What in the world are you trying? It seems like they're trying to create a civil war.
Well, they are. You remember what we just said. Because they are so scared. They're not scared about us starting an investigation. They already know that they're cooked. They're trying to figure out how to keep it from coming out. And so any distraction they can do to disrupt the narrative, to disrupt the administration from accomplishing, holding people accountable, including creating civil wars or anything else, they're all in favor of getting done. So quite frankly, as the days progress, you know, here's what the biggest concern is for the administration. When we start releasing these indictments, what do you think is going to happen on the street, John?
I don't even want to say what I think is going to happen.
America's thinking
Michael,
it.
What is it?
And quite frankly, America's thinking that. And quite frankly, we're having to make sure that we are prepared to deal with that before. See, this is the one thing I appreciate about President Trump. He doesn't do things and then, oh, I didn't know that was a possibility. We should have thought about that before we did it. No, we think through every scenario and we make sure we're prepared for every scenario before it gets released. That's what we're doing now. And quite frankly, we're going to determine to make sure we're in a position to restore justice. This is what it's all about. Restoring justice to the American people. There has been a two-tier justice system for way too long. Those who in authority and in power have politicized and weaponized law enforcement and the federal government, turned it against its own citizens for their own betterment, and they were doing that, robbed the American people blind, put us in $36 trillion worth of debt. Thank God that we've got a president that's trying. Why do I say trying? Folks, this thing is so massive. American people have no idea how bad it is. I used to think, don't worry about it, give us a week and we'll have it fixed. I'm not so sure it's fixable now, but we're going to give it our best bet and try.
Well, that concerns me that you feel that way. Here, because I think
It's
that's the
deep.
first time I've heard you say, I don't know that it's fixable.
Correct. Drastic measures are going to have to be taken. Let me use it in an analogy that the American people can understand. If you got a small little tumor on, say, on your forearm, half hour worth of taking that little tumor out, and cancer's gone, you're good. If it's already in your blood system and it's all over, we're not saying that you're definitely DOA, but you made the job very challenging to keep you alive. Folks, America doesn't have a small tumor. This cancer is spread, it's in the bloodstream, it's all over the place. And that's what causes us deep concern.
Let's here's my question to you. Do you think that these protests are gonna get more violent? I mean, it's warming up across
Yes.
the United States. Do you think it's gonna get more violent? And do you think we're gonna see it turn the corner in any time? Or do you think the summer we're gonna have another summer like the summer of love of 2020?
Well, let's put it in this perspective. The leftist liberals want to have the summer of love stage 2, and they're doing everything they can to get that accomplished. But suddenly we've changed the rules. Suddenly we've changed the enforcement on it. So quite frankly, they're pushing hard. They don't care what happens to the people they're pushing. They don't care if you serve 20 years in jail or not. They could care less. But
They
suddenly
just want
people
their
are
money.
beginning to wake up. They just want their money. They just want to accomplish their end means, which is to create division and to create a change of the narrative to keep themselves from being exposed for what they've done. So they're willing to do whatever they can, but I'm not so sure, based on the new playing rules that we've got and the aggressiveness that we're taking in bringing this to justice, that they'll be able to accomplish that. So quite frankly, that's what they're looking to do. That's what they want to do, is create a massive summer of love times 2. But I believe we're going to be able to nip it in the bud before it happens.
Well, before we switch over to our next topic, it's the top of the hour, so I want to give out real quickly. I want to go back to give out my top of the hour show prayer and the show mantra, folks. Right now we're with Michael Letts, and I want to give out my show prayer and my show mantra. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra: where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. That's my show prayer and the show mantra. Now, I want to real quickly also mention Michael Letts, my guest. As you can see, it has Michael Letts of InvestUSA.org. Michael Letts is the founder and president and CEO of Invest USA. It's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. Folks, I'm going to ask you to go to his website at investusa.org. Please go there. Please consider making a donation, because he helps those that keep us safe in law enforcement. And I want to mention, there was recently one of the headlines one of the topics we want to cover, and I think we just jumped to it right now. An officer was saved by a bulletproof vest just recently. Michael Letts, can you tell us about that story?
It happened Sunday night, and here's real quickly what happened. A gentleman who was having emotional, mental problems, he was having episodes, called in and asked for an officer to assist him. Because of the fact of the nature of the call, we sent 3 units out there along with a transport. and he seemed to have some method of reasoning to him. So we were doing everything possible. This is in Philadelphia to accommodate him in a very gentle and mild manner. They did not cuff him. That's controversy. Just cuffing him because he's mentally ill. So we were trying to assist. Well, when we went to load him, he snapped and he reached in, grabbed one of the guns from the officer, and shot him twice. But fortunately, that vest protected him, and he's going home to his two little kids. And I can tell you and thank your listeners because of that. Two little small children still have a daddy, and I can't express my gratitude enough on your show for those who have helped make sure that that had the ability to be protected.
Well, let's be grateful to our Lord above first. And then, yes, to those of you that have helped offer those services and to your organization and making sure those bulletproof vests get out, we want to say thank you. That's fantastic. And, you know, it brings up another concern of mine that I didn't mention to you, but we talked about 2 weeks ago. There were over 15 incidences of swatting about 3 weeks ago.
Correct.
So InfoWars, hey folks, you may not like InfoWars. That's fine with Alex Jones. That's okay. They had a reporter that was killed. The question is, was that just a situation where people happened to sneak up on him, or he saw someone breaking into his car? I don't know. But the bottom line is there was in Austin that same weekend, the CIA was meeting, and they were also meeting over Ukraine. And then that week, just days later, they had two other reporters swatted. Then they had pizzas delivered to before the swatting and after the swatting, and on the pizzas, the name of the reporter that was killed, Jamie White, was somewhere in those receipts. Bottom line is that they will send, one thing that they do when these swatting instances will happen, they will send pizzas to a lot of times to residences before they happen.
Correct.
I'm concerned, and here's the concern. One of the big concerns is not just for the reporters and so forth. I have concern for police officers. The bottom line is some guy, any one of these conservative individuals. In fact, one of the one was swatted and they went all the way into the bedroom. Right? What
Correct.
happens if a good guy who's done nothing wrong, knows he's done nothing wrong, all of a sudden has someone coming into his room, pulls a gun and shoots a cop, or or a cop shoots him, and come to find out, no, this was just a swatting situation. It's a good thing that the reporters all handled this well, and it's not just the reporters. And this is not with InfoWars. This is with another organization. A guy was swatted, and his family was swatted as well, including a sister who was a Democrat. She's not so Democrat now after that.
Well, quite frankly, it's what we just said, John. They are using every possible means to create disruption. And here is the way democracy and the republic is supposed to work. The American people voted for change and voted for certain platforms that they wanted implemented. Let the president do that. If after the implementation you say, "Oh, that didn't work too well. That's not what I really thought was going to happen." You have the ability in 4 years to vote for somebody with the exact opposite viewpoint that says, "Hey, those are bad ideas. I'm going to change them as soon as I get elected," and we can do that. But this idea of allowing the American people to voice their preference, but then blocking it anyway, is ludicrous. We do not live in a democracy that's run by a mob. We live in a republic that has values and principles, that has a constitution that we abide by. This administration is determined to abide by the Constitution. Just like you talked about swatting and others, that's another tool they use. We're going to rain down on that one very hard as well. Quite frankly, enough is enough, John.
Let's go to, we need more police to be hired. And in leftist cities, they're figuring out really interesting ways to get more cops. I'm not too much of a fan of this one. They're hiring illegal immigrants as cops.
Well, here's where we're at with this, John. California and Colorado have already passed the legislation and have signed it into law. Washington State is, I think it's passed the legislature. It's awaiting the governor's approval, who seems to indicate he will. And quite frankly, you're going to have 3 states, and they're trying to expand it all across the country. What is their basis? We can't get anybody to wear a badge anymore. So let's go on ahead and start hiring illegal immigrants and DACA members to be able to be law enforcement and peace officers. Here's the problem that you have. First of all, they're illegal. That means they're criminals. I know people don't want to hear that, but they're criminals. They're violating Section 8 of the U.S. Code. So what do you think they're going to do to assist ICE when they come to pick up other illegals? Why would you help somebody pick up somebody that you're doing the same thing? Second of all, these illegal immigrants don't come from our culture. Pakistan, they're Latin, they're whatever. They have a whole different system that they've grown up into, whole different way of doing things. I told you I grew up in Mexico for 15 years of my life. I can tell you down there, the system works. The cop is the judge, juror, and executioner all in one thing. When he pulls you, you want to give him $100 tip for to let you go, regardless of what you did. You're on your way. If you want to challenge him or he just doesn't like you, he grabs you and throws you in jail. They don't even remember you're in jail for months. Oh, I guess we have somebody down there in jail. We probably ought to notify his family or something, unless your family's trying to get the American consulate to intervene. That's how the system works. So if that's what they've learned all their life, how do you think they're going to enforce the law in America?
The exact
What I
same
have,
way.
yeah, what I have told, I've been in debates already, on key networks in these states, is look, you didn't have a problem 20 years ago, 30 years ago having enough cops. So why don't you go back to what you were doing then? You know what you were doing then? You weren't doing this stupid defund the police. You weren't criticizing them, telling everybody they were brutes, that they weren't worthy of respect or honor. You honored their profession. And that's why so many people wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to help their community. Go back to what you were doing. So they come up with stupid ideas that don't make any sense and going to make matters worse.
Um, yeah. Uh, here's the thing. We've already heard stories where cops are doing things and getting nailed for trying to take bribes and doing other things. I think it's just gonna and what will happen is even the good cops. Hey, you got $100 bill from Mr. Jose that's an illegal immigrant, finds out he got $100 bill. Ooh, you mean I can do that? Well, just let me
Exactly.
turn off my camera for this scenario and let's see what happens, right?
Because all you have to do is this is how it works. Very simple. Hey, you ran a red light. You're going to go down to court and pay $150 fine. Why don't you just slip me a $100 bill and we'll forget it. Y'all have a good day. And once it starts, be amazing how fast it spreads, not just on traffic tickets, but in everything else, drug deals, etc. That's not where we want to be in this country, John.
No, definitely. Um, and and the bottom line is, they really don't care about the Constitution. They've proved that they
No,
don't really care about it. They came here illegally.
that's correct.
So,
They don't have a constitution in their country. They don't even know what you're talking about.
well, um, I just real quickly want to mention we've got about 15 minutes before our call screener goes. So if you want to ask Michael Letts a question, it's 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. And I see we have people watching us through our website as well as through YouTube. So, folks, plain and simple, call in, ask your questions, or give your opinion. We'd be happy to hear from you. And my favorite people to hear from you or hear from is those that disagree with us. That's
I
the ones
agree.
I'd like to hear the most from. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Doge commissions, the IRS refunds for illegals. I don't know if you saw a piece that was done recently by I think it's Savannah Hernandez, where she was in front of, I want to say it was the Ritz Hotel in front of in New York City, and she
Correct.
goes up to I want to say it was Jackson Hewitt or something like that. One of
Jackson
these.
Hewitt. You got it right.
It was one of these IRS, come and get your IRS refund. And they were telling people who were in the country illegally, if you've got one child, you get like a $7,000. If you've got two children, if you've got one child, it's a $7,000 rebate. If you have two children, it's like $12,000, a little over $12,000. And if you have three children, it's a little over $14,000 refund. I'm like, I need to get me a piece of that action. I've got two kids.
Well, what they're doing is they're using false Social Security numbers. They're filing tax returns. And these are companies, you just mentioned, Hewlett Jackson is one of them, that are helping illegal immigrants to do that. They've never paid a dime into the system. They're getting $14,000 checks in return. Plus, they're helping them get tax credits. You say, what's the tax credit for? You can use a tax credit next time to get even more for next year. So they're figuring out how to rob the U.S. Treasury as well. And that's just in the IRS system. That doesn't include what Doge is finding with Social Security. We've got, what did Elon tell me? I think it's a 1.3 million or maybe billion of people who don't even exist who are on the
I think it
Social
was
Security.
1.3. I think it was 1.3 million people. I want to
Yeah,
say
million. I couldn't remember whether it was million or billion, but I think it was million. And who don't even exist. And that's in the Social Security Administration. So you see, here's what I want to tell the American people. Contrary to what mainstream media will tell you, this is about waste. And yes, we all want to eliminate waste, but you're hurting people's lives by eliminating waste. We need to be careful how we do it. This is not about waste. Waste is when I buy a $2 pen on the government dole and I could have bought it for $1 at Walmart and I wasted $1 of government tax money. This is about fraud. This is about money laundering. This is about embezzlement. When you have just this one thing, 1.3 billion getting Social Security checks that don't even exist, when you have 2.75 trillion dollars in Medicaid that's going to foreign countries. Get that? You have to be an American citizen. How in the world are you getting 2.7 trillion dollars in Medicaid? That's what's going out right now outside the system. And here's why I get back to the statement I made earlier. This is the most intricate, syndicated criminal network organization to ever exist in human history. This is not 2.7 trillion members each stealing $100 from the government. These are small, congregated networks that are raking in all this money. And what are they doing with it? Of course, they're lining their pockets, but they're making sure they spread it around. Oh, hey, U.S. Treasury, who has a program that y'all don't ever check to see whether those checks are valid or not. Thank you for making sure you continue to run those checks. Here's a little bonus money on the side. All that is beginning to come out. That is why I have been telling on this show from day one. We have 30,000 empty beds at the moment in Gitmo, prepared for military tribunals. And I don't think that's going to be enough when we get done to hold them all.
So real quickly, let's play the Susan Hernandez in front of the hotel.
Yes.
My producer extraordinaire has the video. Let's play it. Go ahead, Dwayne. As soon as you're ready, let's do it.
We do this stuff like this, like at all the shelters and stuff.
But like our company, this is why we try to people by, providing them with refunds,
This is Savannah Hernandez in Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. Now, we wanted to come check in on the migrant crisis, and as we were walking around, we saw a Jackson Hewitt table out here with an employee who was handing out this flyer. Now, what this flyer says is working or not, file your taxes, and we can get the maximum refund for your family. And the paper says that if you have one child, you can get over $7,000 in fund, and if you have up to 3 children, you can get over $14,000. So the Jackson Hewitt employee who initially handed me this paper, after finding out I was a journalist, took the paper away. That's why this one's so dirty, because a migrant ended up giving me another copy, and he stated that if he's put on camera and this goes out, that legal will get involved.
We do stuff like this, like all the shelters and stuff.
Our company, this is why we try to help people by, providing them with refunds,
So you guys are trying to help the taxes, then, to help them get refunds, get some money back from the government.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. And then soon as they found out that she was a reporter, they said, you can't use you can't show me on screen, and we'll hear from
Of course not.
Of course that's the case. Of course they want to, because let's be clear. My guess is that Jackson Hewitt knows exactly what they're doing,
They didn't
and
come up with that brochure on their own. I can promise you that.
well, not those local people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That wasn't produced sitting there at that desk.
No, and on top of that, I would say I'd like to have Pam Bondi look into them and seeing exactly what they're doing, because and here's another thing that's even a bigger problem. So this is a comment from Dwayne, our producer. 15,000 of your tax money going to an illegal alien. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of illegal aliens getting. Hey, you want to come here? You want to work? Part of what you have is you need to pay into the system. Well, John, why should they? They come here, they work hard, and you get benefits, and your family gets benefits. Yeah, my family's been here for generations, paying into the system. I'm paying into the system for my kids. My kids are going to be paying into the system. I have a good friend of mine from about 15 years ago, a guy that. Well, maybe not a good friend, but a coworker that I really liked, and we'd have chats all the time. And at that time I had 4 children, and I said, well, hey, I'm getting a lot of money in income tax back from having a bunch of children. And he's like, John, that doesn't matter to me at all, because in 20 years, each one of those children are going to be out in the workforce earning money and paying into the tax system. Bottom line, and hey, you've earned it, and you're going to be earning it in the future, and you're going to be paying plenty of taxes. So I have no problem with it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Right. But the bottom line is someone that just is here, a new arrival. I'm sorry, they should not be getting things for free.
No, and here's what the American people need to understand. Not only are they taking our tax dollars, which they didn't put anything in, so they shouldn't be anything back out, but they're costing the system. Who's educating their children? Who's providing their health care? Who's providing subsidized rent? You and I. So we're paying out a tremendous amount. To add insult to injury, we're going to take money from the U.S. Treasury that you and I had to put in there on top of that and give it to them, when we don't do that for American citizens. So why should there be, again, a two-tier justice system? Gets back to this whole issue that we talked about when we started this conversation. America has a two-tiered system, two-tiered justice system. We have a lot of things that we have to fix, but we have no choice, folks. If we don't fix them, we are destined to be destroyed. We are destined to crumble, as the Roman Empire initially did.
Yep. Let's go to a treasure trove. Cops. This is your note to me, so I'm not exactly sure what this is. Treasure
trove. Let me tell you.
Experience.
Let me tell you what we've got. I think we've talked about it on the air. I may not have talked about it on your show. We have an amusement park. Did I ever mention that to you on the show, Treasure Trove?
I think so. Yes, I want to say you've mentioned that.
Treasure Trove is an amusement park in Cave City, Kentucky. Cave City is where Mammoth Cave is. That's a federal park, national park, one of the 8 wonders of the world. That's all the underground taverns. Beautiful place. If you haven't seen it, you need to go. But we have an amusement park that you go into Mammoth Cave. We own the acreage before it, right off the interstate. One of the things that we're going to be doing this coming year. Now, what are some of the things that Treasure Trove offers? Funny part, All the dinosaurs that you saw in Jurassic Park happen to be living in our park now. They're animated. They're real. They look like they're real. They breathe. They stink like they're real. I don't know about stink, but anyway, they move as if they're real. Great experience for young people to see all these dinosaurs moving around. There's all kind of artifacts, rare artifacts from all across the world, but it's dedicated to our first responders and to our veterans as a way of supporting them.
Oh
One
wow.
of the things that we're looking to do this coming year, we're just about having it complete, is we're going to have an exhibit. I think this is why I wanted to mention it on the air. It's not an exhibit, it's an actual interactive uh, station. When I was coming up and you went to the FBI Academy, there was a program, a computer program. You went into a room, closed the door, you had a 360-degree panoramic view, computer view, image view that popped up, and you were right in the middle of a scene, okay? And in that scene, you were a cop. You became the cop. You had a weapon. Of course, this instead of firing real bullets, fires the lasers. But you had a weapon, and you had to decide how to react in that situation. It's a traffic stop. You're pulling somebody over. You ask for their license. What are they reaching for? They're reaching for the license. They're reaching for a gun. And it's a split, a life and death decision. You're going into a situation to where there's hostages, and suddenly everybody's running crazy, running out of the building. Are you letting the terrorists out as well? So you realize how stressful it can be. You get to be in the middle of that situation. We're going to offer that there. We want every American to come through this park to spend 1 minute in the graphic room so you can see the stress and the reactionary time of a life and death decision that these officers have to make every day. And I think it'll revolutionize the way people view law enforcement because once you've been in it and once you've seen it, realize how fast it occurs, you'll never be the same.
Yeah, that's something that I try to do. Yeah, I've been pulled over in the last 10 years 3 or 4 times, and I obviously I was driving just 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, right?
Exactly.
And my number one goal is to make sure that law enforcement individual feels absolutely confident that I am no threat to them and that he's going home safe after interacting with me. Yeah, that's something that's very important to me to have. So that's awesome that you're going to have that. So hopefully that gives especially a number of young people the opportunity to
Correct.
go, you know what, this is something I want to do.
And that's our whole purpose behind it. Because we've talked about it on your show before, and all your other shows as well, briefly. We're in a national crisis. When Joe Biden came into office, we had 1.4 million sworn officers across the country. When he left, we had roughly 700,000. We can't sustain law and order with those kind of numbers.
So that's
You say,
almost a
well,
50% reduction.
almost 50%. You say, well, great. Did you hire them all back in the day? Here's the problem. Because such a job was done on the image of law enforcement, how they're just bad people. They question everything they do. You don't let them do their job. You have a bureaucrat tell you whether you could use your right hand or your left hand to fight somebody, etc. People just said, you know what? You asked me to put my life on the line. You pay very little, and I have to put up with this. No respect. Yeah, I'll pass. I'll drive a garbage truck if I have to. And right now, we can't find anybody to put on the badge, which is why you have the issue that you saw there, in terms of uh, the California, Colorado, desperate saying, "Hey, let's just go ahead and hire illegals." That's not the solution either. But the solution is to fix the problem and just do what we're doing now. Show the honor behind caring for your fellow man and for your neighbors in your community. And let's restore people's imagination, young people's excitement about being public servants once again.
Yeah. Let's also another subject you had that you wanted to cover was Iran and Russia. What are your thoughts there? Let's get to some of the international things. Also, something that I said I wanted to cover is what's happening with the Epstein files, and so there's still a few subjects I want to hit, but let's hit Iran, Russia. What are your thoughts that's going on there?
Well, quite frankly, you have those within our administration and within the party who are attempting to keep us at war via Ukraine. And if it can't be Ukraine, let's enter another conflict. Why is that? Because, first of all, it provides the greatest to make sure that people do not have to concentrate on the news about what's going on a day-to-day basis. So they're trying to get us into war. Now, how are they doing that? They're trying to, first of all, create problems with bringing a ceasefire and a peace plan between Ukraine and Russia. Second thing they're doing is they're stoking the fire with Iran, and they're trying. We cannot allow Iran to have nuclear capabilities to be able to launch across the world, and that's why we're pursuing what we're pursuing. But quite frankly, the path is not war. The path is strength through peace, and we have that ability to do that. We have the capacity to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities and just leave it at that. So does Israel. We have the capacity to bring in a ceasefire and a peace accord in Ukraine. But when you have other people, Republicans, who keep saying, no, we're going to continue to fund Ukraine. Let's continue to fund the war mechanism. Let's go on ahead and attack Iran boldly without trying to figure out ways to do it behind the scenes. It poses the situation we get into a world war situation again. And there's nothing more that they would like. That would really disrupt the American people.
Okay, so do you see Iran and Russia as bad actors? Do you see one worse than the other? What are your thoughts there?
No, I believe, quite frankly, John, that it's all in a matter of negotiations and relationships. It does not serve Russia's best interest to continue to be at war with Ukraine. It also doesn't serve Russia's best interest to take on the United States. But what serves in the best interest is for us to do what President Trump was attempting to do. Let's find a way of, first of all, the American people don't support the war in Ukraine anymore. We're tired of paying for something that brings us no results we had no business to be involved with to begin with. So the president said, why don't we strike a deal? You have great mineral resources. Why don't we send over American technology to help extract those, and we'll share in the profits? That would do two things. Would pay us back for all the investment that we made into Ukraine, A. And B, do you think Russia is going to try to invade when there's an American presence in Ukraine? Not hard. Now,
No,
what are we going
they,
to
they
do
would.
out of
They
how are
will
we
be
going to
much more
satisfy Russia?
resistant
Yeah.
to doing that.
And how are we going to satisfy Russia? Well, that was very simple. Is, unfortunately, Ukraine's probably going to lose some of its property, and there are mineral deposits there. We would do the same offer with Russia. We would help Russia mine those. Russia could make profit off of what it had. There would be peace. There would be stability in the region, and that's the best way. On the
I'll tell you
second issue,
one other
you've
thing
got
that would one other
what's
thing
that?
that would one other thing that would be great from that is having the minerals go to the United States as opposed to China.
Exactly. And because
It
of
looks
that,
like your headset is run out of juice. Am I
it,
right on that?
you are right. So now I'm just listening to the volume on the phone, which I'm making an adjustment as we speak, so that I can hear a little bit better.
Do you want to pull out your earpieces and start them charging?
I am doing that right now. Now
Okay,
we're good.
great.
I've never had them both run out at the same time. I guess it's been a long day.
You've been talking to a lot of people today, apparently.
Well, there's a lot to be said. But so back on the Iranian situation, Russia is an ally of Iran, and it's made a commitment. If it is attacked, then it will help defend Iran. Problem is all in how you present it. Russia doesn't want Iran to have nuclear capability either. But let's plan on a way of making sure that it either covertly gets taken out or that they agree to take out their capability for nuclear war. But
Do you think
we
Russia
can do
would do
that
that?
collectively.
Do you think Russia would do that?
I think Russia would be happy to allow that to happen as long as we don't plaster it all over the news. And what you see happening is you see key senators and congressmen saying, we're going to go ahead and invade Iran, or we're going to go ahead and nuke them. we're going to go ahead and would continue to support fully armaments to Ukraine. And as all they're doing is trying to feed a war mechanism that makes money for them, not good sense for us.
All right, so I want to get to your thoughts on the other concern I have is how much is China involved in Iran and Russia? We need to do everything we can to separate China, especially from Russia, if not even help them separate themselves from Iran.
Oh, there's no question because, quite frankly, Iran is searching for any ally that they think has the ability to engage us. And China has no business messing in our affairs, just like we don't need to be messing in theirs. And, one of the key elements in doing that is we have to make sure that we have the ability to protect the Red Sea, the Gulf of Omar, and other things. And that's with the Panama Canal. That's why the Chinese have such an interest in gaining control over that so that they begin to have more control over the region. You see, there's a lot of things going on foreignly that we have to be involved with as well to keep our country at peace.
Okay, so want your thoughts on what's happening with the Epstein files, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Tom Homan. How do you think Tom Homan's doing with getting people? Are we getting people out of the United States fast enough? Is he doing a good enough job there?
We are getting them out fast, not fast enough. You say, what's fast enough? Is what the president invoked with the Illegal Enemies Act, because then you can immediately move them the same day instead of having to make sure that they had been through their due process. I find it ironic that we're talking about criminals who are not citizens have due process. That's the liberal side. They should have the right to have a due process, even though they're criminals and they're not American citizens. But if we get that issue resolved, we can move it faster. If not, we're still going to be moving through as fast as we can because there are millions who have already been turned down for asylum who are still in this country. We're working on those every day.
What about so we're starting to hear that people are starting to self-deport. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, we reversed the app. You remember Biden made an app to make it easier for you to get in. We reversed it and made it easier for you to get out. And here's what we're saying by easier to get out. You can let us come knock on your door at whatever time we decide to get there and round you up. And of course, you remember if you have kids, there's the question about whether they have citizenship or not. So you're thinking about, oh, you're going to break up the family. Look here. For an American citizen, if I pull you over for DUI and you have a child in the car, you're going to jail. I'm going to separate you from that child because the child's not going to jail with you.
Right.
Same principle here. If you're an illegal immigrant, we're deporting you, regardless of who else you have around. Or you can keep and do what's best for your family and keep it intact. Go through this app. We'll help you through this app. Figure out how to deport. We'll even make sure that we provide transportation, whether your country pays for the air transportation, whether we have flights going out that way. It's much smoother, easier, and safer for you to deport yourself. You get to decide who all you're taking with you, and you get to remain a family as a whole, unless we have to do it because you're here illegally.
Wise move. Like that move. All right. What are your thoughts on the somewhat release, but not? I'm sorry. I don't think there's been a total release. We don't have all the information from the JFK files, the RFK and MLK files. But let's just hit the JFK files. What are your thoughts about the release so far? There's no smoking gun that says that that there was anybody other than Oswald, according to those that believe the government story.
It is interesting, John, because you are correct there. And those files are still being released. It has not been fully released yet, contrary to the executive order. And we're finding out why, because those files were being held by the CIA. This is not the FBI. This is the CIA files. What was interestingly released was video. And if you look at the video, you can clearly see that the person who shot the president, the fatal shot, was the driver of the motorcade. And when you look and analyze and do the research work as to who that driver was, he was a CIA operative who had been assigned to the Secret Service for that day. The weapon he used was a specialized design weapon. It had a specialized projectile that had C poison in the projectile, so that when it hit the brain, if for some reason that didn't eliminate the president, the C poison would do it within 30 seconds. That's why they had to put a different brain in during the autopsy, because they didn't want anybody to find out about that. So, quite frankly, they did and didn't solve the problem. They didn't make it obvious. But if you take a look at the videos and you look through all the information, it's there, John.
What are your thoughts on the release so far, and what has been released and what hasn't been released? Because there's starting to be, from some people within the conservative side, shall we say, that are saying Pam Bondi's not doing her job in releasing the Epstein files. Kash Patel isn't doing his job, and President Trump is not keeping his commitment. What are your thoughts there?
I understand that, and I've heard that quite often. But let me clarify the position. The Epstein files, we're not just talking about one or two people. We're talking about an international international network that was established to blackmail politicians, world leaders, business leaders, all across the globe. That was accomplished for decades. Those files and videotapes exist. We have the indictments that have been prepared. I don't know if they've all been completed, but the indictments have been prepared for those who participated. However, when you're dealing with people that have that kind of influence and that kind of wealth, trust me, you have to make sure that everything is in order before you move to the next stage. There are ramifications of this. When you're talking about key corporate leaders across the country, they could plunge this country into a depression if they so desire. So we're having to navigate all that and make sure it gets released. But I can tell you one thing that has not changed, and that is the firm commitment of the president, of Pam, and of Cash to make sure that file gets fully released. It's not just released. That's not the important part. The important part is the people that are involved be indicted and be tried for their crimes.
I want to see. So here's a question, a couple of questions for you. Who do you think is at the head? Is it MI6? Is it the CIA? Is it Israeli intelligence? Who do you think's at the very pinnacle of the operation when it comes to Epstein?
Here's what I'm laughing at. If you ask each one of those individually, they'd say they are. But quite frankly, we all know better. Who happens to be the most powerful organization or the country in the world? We're the ones that have taken spear with that. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
That's my opinion. If the CIA and the FBI didn't want a thing being done, if the dark side of government didn't want something being done, it wouldn't be done.
You're exactly right. And see, here's what I want the American people to understand. And I'm just as frustrated as they are. This should have been released yesterday. But when you're talking about this massive of an organization of corruption, the ramifications are mind-boggling. You don't get a second chance. So we're going to make sure that it's done the right way. We're going to make sure that those that are responsible, not just the people, not just the Epstein, but the clients, they're just as guilty, okay? We're going
I'm
to make
much more
sure
concerned
that,
about the clients. Epstein's supposedly dead. Now,
correct.
do I really think he's dead? I'd say there's about an 80% chance that he's not. But the bottom line is that doesn't matter a ton. I'm much more worried about the clients because they're still out there doing stuff.
You're
And
exactly
then,
right. And what you need to be aware of, John, is it's not just Epstein. He had an organization, a network that was assisting in that as well.
what has happened with so what's happened with the organization? Is it continuing? Is
It is
he
continuing.
part of that?
Yes, it is continuing. And here's where it becomes frustrating. Again, you're talking about major agencies within the U.S. government, major players within the U.S. government, besides worldwide. Folks, sometimes it's hard to bring down the big cow. It fights a little harder when you try to lasso it and bring it down.
Okay, so one of the things that I think is making this so tough is there were whether it be the CIA, probably both the CIA, FBI. My guess is attorney generals of the United States that knew this was going on and was allowing it to take place. That's some pretty high, very high level people knew that it was happening, were allowing it to take place. Even if they said, well, eventually we're going to bring these guys in, they let it happen. They didn't stop as soon as they found out about it.
You're exactly right. In fact, they aided and abetted. They didn't just know about it. They aided and abetted it. Maybe they didn't participate, but they aided and abetted. Well, you know what? Ask how many people we've got in prison now who are just found guilty of aiding and abetting another criminal.
Plenty.
It's still a crime.
Yeah. This to me, this whole evil, I think it may even be bigger than abortion. So
it is.
And to me, I think God is more upset with it even than he is with abortion, because at least the babies get to go back and be with God, right?
Correct.
Those children become adults, and many of them become perpetrators themselves. If they don't, we know that some of the victims wound up becoming hustlers with Ghislaine Maxwell, wound up hustling other people and getting them into it. So I mean, and I don't put the total blame on them, but what I'm saying is that's what happens, right?
No, you're exactly right, John. And here again, let me stress to our listeners the level of frustration. You're not even talking about one or two high-profile people that you can quote unquote contain the damage that can be afflicted when they're exposed. We're talking about thousands upon thousands. And depending on how that's released, that can these people still have influence, okay? They can lead into a civil war faster than you realize. We just have to make sure we're prepared for every contingency. We're doing that. And the one thing that I'm making sure of is that I ask the question almost daily. We haven't forgotten. Where are we at? Where are we at? When? Where are we at? Where are we at? Because it has to come out.
When would your guess be that some of this all the information's coming out? When
I
do you
think you're
guess
seeing
that
it come
will
up
happen?
here as the summer approaches. I think it's going to be a very lively summer. Not a summer of love, but a very lively summer of exposing corruption and draining the swamp.
Okay. Last thing I want to hit. What are your thoughts on the tariff situation here and the economy? How do you think that's going? Want your thoughts?
I think it's going well in one aspect. Does it produce additional revenue? Is it a right idea to explore? Yes. Is it being used to help bring reform about in other countries? Yes. Which one is going to prevail? Are we going to stick to it and use it as a form or mechanism to reduce America's taxation and bring it in by additional revenue tariffs from other countries? Or are we going to use it as a negotiating table? I think the president wants to do a little of both. I think what his main objective is, which I think is the best way to do it, is look, we don't have to have any tariffs if you don't. Then we'll figure out how to fund our own government without tariffs. But as long as you feel it necessary to put tariffs on American goods, we're going to put the same tariffs on you. I think that's fair. And quite frankly, I think a lot of other governments, like it or not, that is their main source of revenue. And I don't see them being able to give up tariffs and going down to zero for their economic sake. So if that's the case, we will not do the same, and that's where it will generate tremendous revenue for the United States of America.
Well, the bottom line is to the Ben Shapiro's of the world that say, and to the other individuals that say tariffs are just attacks on the United States. Bottom line is we've been taxed by these other countries. Some of them we're not even able to send our goods to. Okay,
correct.
If you want to bring your goods in here, take tariffs away from the United States, and we should take it. But if you're going to have tariffs here on the United States, sorry, bottom line is if you're going to have it against us, we should have it against you.
I agree. And I think what you're seeing now is, again, as we said, I think this is a good play by the president. Look, based on what it is now, if we just make everything even, we won't need taxation. We'll be able to fund the government with tariffs. However, uh, a lot of countries are going to say, well, we can't afford these new tariffs that America is placing on it, but they're going to be forced to reduce or eliminate, probably not eliminate, but reduce their tariffs to a point where they feel like they can get the best of both, where they can fund their government and still be able to live with the same equal amount of tariff, us placing that on them. And the president's position is, once that all gets established and all the dust settles, we'll figure out the revenue coming in and see where we're at that stage, is what we can do to change the taxation system for the American people.
Okay. Well, Michael, I'm going to say thanks for your time today. Is there
Thank
any
you, and
last?
apologize for the technical issues at the last second, but
That's
first time
okay.
it's ever happened to me.
That's okay. Well, Michael, I want to say thank you for joining us. This is, folks, just so you know, Michael Letts is with Invest USA, investusa.org. Please go to his website. They provide thousands of bulletproof vests to law enforcement and first responders. Folks, this is an organization worth helping. Good people doing good things, trying to help law enforcement be there for you when you need them. So, folks, this has been Talk with John. Michael, any last words?
Thank you so much to your listeners. Thank you for helping be open to trying to do what's best to save this country. Thank you for caring, and thank you for caring for our first responders. Because of your care, there are many that are going home to families that would have died had it not been for you. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you, John, for keeping the truth front and center. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, take care.
See you next month, my friend. Take care.
Okay, my friend. Bye-bye.